Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the inaugural board meeting for the Escambia Children's Trust. I am a volunteer, and we have lots of volunteers here from our campaign committee and also from our transition team. If you could just stand up and wave. Yay. So tonight we are handing it over to you, and what a thrilling moment this is for our kids, our families, our Escambia County. We do not have officers elected, and so technically I and nobody else but you can call the meeting to order, and so that is going to be one of the top items on our agenda. And so I wanted to go to agenda item 2 and also let you know you've got copies of the full agenda, the attachments, and then you have 3 slides per page of the whole PowerPoint presentation. And what we're going to do is go through the agenda after introductions. So agenda item 2, I wanted us all to, introduce ourselves and, make opening comments at this time. And one last point is that we do have a meeting minute taker. And that is Jennifer Grove is our volunteer meeting minute taker. Thank you.
Madam Administrator, would you please come forward? And so I will say very candidly, I do appreciate all that's been done. Unfortunately for me, there are items on this agenda that cannot be discussed until you do create the board, and I think it's premature. And so I don't know if we're going to move to accept this agenda as printed, but I certainly want to know exactly the involvement that the county has in putting this together. I certainly want the county is the agent that approved the referendum. The county will be the one that will levy the tax, remit the tax, and distribute the funds. And so, in my opinion, this should be a very short meeting, and certainly an organizational meeting in getting, establishing the chair and the co-chair, and then to look at the other items, whether we create subcommittees or other committees. I'm not completely clear on how bylaws and administrative support and how all those things were created, and I would love to have clarification if the county had input into that.
No, sir, there's a transition team that has been working on these particular documents, along with Ms. Watson, who is on the screen above you. She is the statewide director for Children's Trust.
A transition team appointed by who?
I would just say the community came together and did that.
The community appointed a transition team. Okay.
So I'll just add that what we're doing is just researching and proposing. There is the model of the Children's Services Council, and so we have some options on how to execute that model, and that's all that we've done is some research. And we do have agenda item 3, which is reviewing the agenda, making any changes, deletions, moving things up and down. And then looking at agenda 4, activities from November 3rd to where we are right now.
Right.
So we will cover a lot of that, Commissioner.
Well, thank you.
And I would say that
And certainly for me, I'm sorry, Your Honorable, but go right ahead.
All I was going to say is that if we needed a member to call the meeting to order, I could do that. I would appoint you to start with introductions. I agree that maybe what we should be doing is trying to learn tonight, and that some of this.
we'll need you to turn your mic on. There's a speak button.
There you go.
All right, I'll start over. Thank you. I'm always mic'd, so I'm not used to having to turn it on.
Exactly.
I'm Judge Fred Rahovich. I was just simply saying that if we needed a member to call the meeting to order, that I could do that, and then we could go down the line with the introductions, and that I agreed with the Commissioner's comments that maybe tonight should be more informative, and some of these decisions could be tabled until we are more informed.
Thank you.
And I did want to say that the other 2 things that the county has done is we have submitted the letters on behalf of the Children's Trust to the Speaker of the House and to the Senate President.
So I guess you've called it to order?
I did, and then I turned it over to you.
That's absolutely. Commissioner Lumen May, County Commissioner, District 3, and happy to be here in support of Escambia Children's Trust and represent Escambia County and my 4 colleagues who are not here.
I'm Judge Fred Rahovich. I'll say it again, Fred Rahovich. I'm also happy to be here. I am a juvenile judge here in Escambia County.
Good evening, I'm Patty Hightower. I am on the school board for Escambia County. I represent the voters of District 4. Actually, I represent the entire district, the entire county. We're elected geographically. And I am so excited about this initiative. I have talked with people who have children's trust already in their communities. And in the 16 years I've been on the school board, I think this conversation has happened many times, and I'm so grateful now that our community is supporting it and they're ready to make a big change for our students.
Good evening. My name is Tim Smith, the superintendent of Escambia County School District. Thrilled to be here, thrilled to represent our teachers, support staff members, administrators, and students, and certainly honored to work with School Board Member Hightower. We are excited about the future of education moving forward, and we are extremely excited about this organization, this trust coming together. I would like to tip my hat to those in the community who put energy and effort into this initiative, and having a 61% winning margin of votes is a true testament to the community and their value and their priority of children in our community. So many thanks to the community members who really drove this initiative and helped so much bring communication and awareness to our constituents and our residents, and excited and honored to be here.
Good evening. My name is Walter Sachs. I'm the Regional Director for the Department of Children and Families. The Northwest region covers from Monticello, Jefferson County, all the way over to Escambia County. I am a Tallahassee resident. Part of my role here tonight is to be the member from DCF that represents on the Children's Trust. However, as time progresses, I will probably designate a community development administrator, my local leader here in Escambia County, to be the board member. My current community development administrator is retiring this September, so I didn't want to put this on him and then have an immediate transition right after that. So I will be your person for several months. And as we designate someone to fill his role, we'll have them come and be my designee. Many of you know that Leon County also passed in this election, Children's Services Council, 65% of the vote, so they beat y'all by a little bit. And I'll be sitting on that CSC. So they have yet to have their inaugural meeting, so you guys are ahead in that area. And I wanted to also congratulate the citizens of Escambia County for passing this. It's very exciting. The Department of Children and Families has a large mission, and many of our communities are supported in the world of prevention by Children's Services Councils across our state. And they have historically outperformed other areas that do not have Children's Services Councils with dedicated funding for prevention services in the community. Many of you who are familiar with Children and Families know that Secretary Popple has changed the mission of our agency to be a more prevention-focused agency and less focused on crisis, and try to get ahead of issues in families and try to work on the front end. Just a little bit more about me. This is my 32nd year in public service and state government. I started out when HRS was HRS back in 1988, and we were a very diverse agency. We're now a little different. In that time frame, I was primarily on the contracts and procurement side of the house, so I did a lot of that stuff on the backside outsourcing. And I also served as the Inspector General at Department of Management Services for 3 years. So I have a little bit of that background as well. And in 2016, I took over as Regional Managing Director for the Northwest Region. In 2019, about May, the secretary called and said we had a resignation in Tampa, and I needed to go run Tampa for him. I thought it was a few weeks. It turned out to be 8 months. So I commuted to Tampa for 8 months and sat on the Children's Board of Hillsborough County. So I have experience on the Children's Board. It was a phenomenal experience to see the programs that can be funded and the services that can be given to communities and the dedication of the community to support the Children's Board. So I'm a big fan. I can't wait to hear about the successes that come from this. I look forward to the complete staffing of the board. That makes all the difference because the community membership really, really helped drive the passion of the board, and the leadership that the board follows is also a key role. So thank you for having me, and I look forward to a great relationship.
Thank you. And that's an honor. And I don't know, Kim, if you're taking over, you can go ahead.
I'm just your fearless MC. So getting to your request to review the agenda, that is our next item. I just wanted to say that we created this agenda based on what Alachua County did for their first meeting. So this is an identical list of agenda items from 1 through 15 to what Alachua County Children's Services Council did after their referendum passed in November 2018. Their first meeting was March following their referendum. So we are ahead of the game, and we intend to stay that way with your support.
Can I ask a question? Have they sat their entire board when they had their first meeting?
No, their county attorney ruled that 5 would be a majority to be able to make decisions. And we likewise, I believe, have the same designation from our county attorney.
And let me say, Kim, and I appreciate everything, and I'm happy to, if we are officially a board, to move the agenda with amendments. Obviously, I would have hoped that our council would be here tonight from the county, and unfortunately, I don't believe, Ms. Gilly, is there anybody here from our attorney's office as it relates? Well,
We do have volunteer counsel.
I know Meredith well. Unfortunately, she doesn't work for the county, and we should have had county counsel here, so that's fine. So I guess, I mean, because I don't have counsel that advises us, and we're the one that's in this, are we an official board where we can take action in the opinion, Ms. Gilly? I mean, can we move and accept this agenda legally? Because I don't have counsel to give me advice, or rather
So
not.
I'm not an attorney, you know that.
Absolutely.
But at the meeting in which this was presented to our board, Ms. Krupa did ask the board if you all could sit until the governor made until he made his appointments, because it could take several months. And the response was yes, that you could organize and meet as a board.
So we're an official board, so we can move the agenda item and accept it.
I will go on a limb and say yes.
Okay, not a problem.
Judge probably says I shouldn't do
Well,
that,
it
but
leads me to my next question about the minutes, because I heard we had a volunteer minute taker, which I appreciate, but how are they being stored? How long, who's storing them? Where, I mean, who's going to be responsible for all of that?
so that's part of the presentation I think that they're going to give you,
All
is
right.
talking about public records, talking about staffing, and talking about sunshine and things like that.
And
So I
so-
think they have a presentation for those things.
Sure.
But then, I don't know, I mean, a presentation still results, I mean, how do we sort the minutes? And is it, and I'm great if it's not an official meeting and we've not said it, I'm happy with that. But is this an official meeting? I mean, Florida Sunshine, quite frankly, there's no one on this dais that needs a tutorial on sunshine, because we all serve in elected office. So, I mean, I don't need a 45-minute, I mean, I take the ethics every year, so I don't need a Florida Sunshine unless someone who's sitting here needs it. I would just, in our opinion, and maybe Meredith, you can answer it. Do we consider this an official meeting and with action items, or will this be an organizational meeting in which we get the officers because we don't have a chair or a vice chair of those things? So in your legal opinion, is this a duly called meeting?
Thank you, Commissioner. It has been noticed under the sunshine. It's open, there are minutes being taken. That would be one thing that you would address, would be record keeping and such. If you were to proceed, if you wanted to proceed informally and not take action, again, it has been publicly noticed. You're absolutely entitled to do so and gather information. But my understanding is that this is following the Alachua model. Our ordinance also follows the Alachua model, and your county attorney gave an opinion that this would be, sufficient for the 5-member board to take action. And again, it has been noticed and meets the requirements for the meeting.
If I could make a comment, I think it would be appropriate that some of these agenda items be reviewed, but a perfect example is the sunshine presentation. As you mentioned, we don't need it, but potentially the new appointees will,
Absolutely.
and there's no sense to do it twice.
Exactly.
So that we might want to look through the agenda as this item and see what items we could defer and which items we don't feel comfortable actually taking action on tonight, but then proceed with the other ones we are comfortable with.
Right. And I certainly concur. Madam Administrator, I would think that because the county is levying this tax, that in the future, as we transition into this committee, that we would have counsel and staff here to assist with that. And so Jennifer, I do appreciate it. But I think that would be beneficial to us to have our legal representation here along with Meredith. So if we could look through the items, I certainly agree with my colleague here that we don't need a tutorial in the Florida sunshine, or if there are any other things that we can strike from the agenda.
Well, I think if there is a presentation, an education presentation, potentially other than sunshine, I would like to hear it.
Absolutely.
Frankly, because I have so many questions that I think one question's leading to another question, so maybe it would be good to hear what the volunteers have to share with us. And then we could ask our questions from there. I don't really know what that falls under as far as the agenda item goes, but I know that I'd reviewed it, that at least there was going to be some presentation, I think by our guest here on the screen maybe, from the council. But
So Honorable, would it be appropriate to just let the volunteer group, and I don't know if it's a formal transition team, and
Right.
I keep hearing a transition
Right.
group, and I know that would
Well, I agree.
be a
I think-
formal group, but could we allow for her to just do her presentation
I think we can do
and
that.
not worry about this agenda?
I think we can do that. That
Okay.
would be my vote, is to
Yep.
hear that first, and then we could decide what we're comfortable doing tonight and not
Yeah,
comfortable.
and I think items 4 and 6 are the two that sort of jump out that have relevance that we could have some discussion over and then just hold off on everything else. I know that 10 has relevance, and I would be very interested in navigating 10, but 10 probably has a lot to do with the input from our other membership as well. So.
I could be very supportive of just hearing the presentation and do 4 and 6, because I do agree with you. There's going to have to be more detail in terms of, I'm certainly not going to review, discuss, and vote on bylaws that I had no input on. I mean, that's just not going to happen.
But you received the bylaws in time to review them. And you could make notes to if we elect an interim chair and a vice chair,
Right.
then we answer all the questions that you have.
Right.
Because, and the 5 sitting here are the 5 that are required by the referendum, in the referendum language, not specific people, but positions. So, I think that I'm with you on let's hear the presentations, but I do think that in order to continue to move forward, we need to get interims. We know that once we have a full council, there would be additional input. But in order to get started, the bylaws.
Well, and Patty,
could be-
I would agree with you that, to review, and although we received them, we had no input in my council, and quite frankly, the county levies the tax, and our council has not had an opportunity to review them. And so we should have input to be able to come back to a meeting in which we can all have input on those bylaws. Those bylaws were presented by people that were not elected nor appointed, and so I'm not comfortable with that. So, but I would love to have the presentation.
And I agree with including 8 after the presentations. The establishment of an interim chair and vice chair, I think, is critically important tonight.
Absolutely. So the floor is yours.
Well, we do have 4, and this is not that long. And I also have Michelle here at the ready as our expert on the Children's Services Council model. But that's one of the first things on November 4th that the volunteers behind the campaign did, is just meet with Administrator Gilley, meet with the Florida Children's Council, and survey how other Children's Services Councils started out to identify best practices to then propose to you. And then we looked at some new assets from peer counties, St. Lucie County and Broward County, to kind of get a handle on the rigor of more sophisticated Children's Services Council models, kind of like the gold star, what we can move to as we set up our own Escambia Children's Trust. We did do a brief presentation to the county commissioners in December. It was more of an update. And then, of course, the administration launched the citizen application process. A couple other administrative type of bullets that have been taken care of, all meeting guidelines and deadlines set forth in statute. The one thing I would add about the gubernatorial appointments is that we're actively seeking citizen nominees with a January 30th deadline. The commissioners will select 15 from the applicant pool to move up to the governor, I believe on February 18th. And so what we've just been doing is trying to get the word out to encourage as many citizens to apply for these positions as possible. And quite a few of them, I think, are here in the room today. But as of today, we only have 5 citizen applications. And this is, the number one most important thing to making sure we are set up for success, is having a robust, diverse applicant pool that represents our county, our issues. And so that was just a quick item for number 4.
So that leads me to my question of this application, does this come from the Florida Council, or was this application modeled from another county?
Yes, do you want to?
Honorable, while Administrator Gilley's coming, I didn't recognize, Judge Danhauser, thank you for being here. I just recognize you, and thank you for your service. I didn't know we had elect. Gotcha, thank you for being here.
Yes, so this application, actually, Ms. Watson and others had provided examples from around the state. And there were questions that were looked at by folks that were currently participating in this trust, in the development of the trust. And so we kind of looked through the different questions and tried to find those that we thought responded to the needs of the trust as a board, and then also to the needs of our community. And then the second piece of that is you also have to fill out a gubernatorial application, because this board should not be submitting to the governor folks that haven't also completed that very arduous task if you have not done that before. So there are 2 parts to this application. So, but unfortunately, we do have 7. 2 did not fill out the gubernatorial. We've sent that back and reminded them of that. We do have our PIO doing another push tomorrow, trying to get the information out to the media. We mentioned it at the board meeting today, and then also Andrew McKay mentioned it on the radio this morning as well. So we're trying very hard with 10 days left.
Ms. Gilley?
Yes,
So there's 10 days left for the application, and we have 5 that have already been submitted, and we will submit 15 to the governor, correct?
Well, so yes, sir, that's your goal. He would like at least 15, I think. So we've developed a process, but I guess if you only get 10, hopefully you get some good ones in there.
But, I mean, who set the deadline?
So we set the deadline, trying to get to a February date. I believe the February 18th board meeting is our goal, so that you all would hopefully be able to be set sometime, hopefully in the spring. But I can just share with you, having worked in a governor's office and done gubernatorial applications, it takes sometimes weeks or months.
Yes.
So
Yeah, yes.
So it could be summer, and I know that you all have deadlines that you have to meet, and so that was part of our diligence in trying to get this done.
All right. But potentially, the deadline could be extended.
Yes,
okay.
absolutely. That is obviously an opportunity for this, for everyone to consider.
Would that be a recommendation of this committee, or would that be the final decision in the hands of the Board of County Commissioners?
That's my understanding as well.
Okay, so we could extend it
So we have
as
a
board.
February 4th board, so we would be able to report to you at February 4th what it looked like in terms of the ones that we had gotten and how many we had.
And I'm happy to bring it to my colleagues if you feel like the number's not sufficient.
Well, I guess it just depends. If the board is satisfied with the ones that were submitted, or if they think we need to solicit more.
And that could be a good thing for us to think about is how many is appropriate. Because if we're shy 2 that we won, or if we're over 5, what are we comfortable with?
Well, but I think it's not just about the number, but the quality as well. I mean, I have
Yes.
no idea who's applied, or not, but.
Yes, agreed. Yes.
So, okay. Thank you. Sorry.
Okay.
Thank you for the great dialogue, everyone. We did have Florida Sunshine next. Was I hearing correctly that we were going to skip over that?
Yes.
Okay. So forgive me while I fly through these slides. We're going to jump to number 6, reviewing the county ordinance and the overview of the Children's Services Council model. Does that sound acceptable? Okay. Well, I wanted to turn it over to Michelle Watson, who we keep referring to. Michelle, we're seeing you here in the room on a big screen. So if we could turn it over to you to talk to the community and the board about the Children's Services Council model.
Absolutely. Can everybody hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
I just heard my echo, so I'm assuming that's a yes. Thank you so much for having me. I'm the CEO of the Florida Children's Council, and we represent all of the Children's Services Council and Children's Trusts that have been created by ordinance around the state. And so we are made up of a member organization that works to support not only existing communities with technical assistance, but also new communities with technical assistance as they start to set up their children's trust or Children's Services Council, however you determine the naming is going to be. In your case, it's a children's trust. With that, I want to make sure that you understand, when Kim went through and said that they had already registered with the department, with the tax collector and the Department of Economic Opportunity and updated the website, those are things that are mandated to have been done within the first 30 to 60 days after the election has been certified by the Department of Economic Opportunity. So I just want to make sure that you understand that that this group of volunteers is not going out and doing anything that is not part of what is just legally required as part of a referendum that gets passed. So it's really important that you all have a great group of volunteers. You are ahead of Leon, where I'm located, and are really, really hitting the ground running. Just as you understand, a lot of the bylaws that we collected bylaws from all of our members, and I understand that you all have not had a chance to review them, which is perfectly fine, but a lot of those are based off of bylaws from currently operating children's services councils and children's trusts around the state. Many of you understand that children's services councils have been around a significantly long amount of time. And so we are tending to get better and have a lot of lessons learned, and that's what we're here to help with. And so the Children's Services Council model for the establishment and the standing up of the organization is not a singular pathway. There are definitely opportunities for you all to decide how this organization gets stood up. So when Kim talks about the fact that they surveyed other CSCs, there were children's services councils or children's trusts that when they were established, they were completely supported by the county, had county staff, had county dedicated staff who then went ahead and hired the executive director, worked with the board, and is now actually working to now decouple that. So there are pros and cons to each approach. I'm not here to tell you do it this way or do it that way. I'm just here to share the experiences of other counties so that you can chart your own paths forward. There's other organizations that when they passed voter referendum, the county gave them a line of credit and said, we don't have the bandwidth to really support you. We're going to give you our county attorney to establish you as an organization. From there, we're going to lift off. We're going to give you a line of credit till you actually collect those tax dollars, which for you all will begin collecting those tax dollars in October. And during that time, there is a lot of tasks that need to be completed. So for example, you all go to trim hearings and work with the tax collector to set that levy against your millage rate beginning this April. So you all need a designee, somebody who can represent the Children's Trust of Escambia as part of those trim hearings. And so that's really the impetus for moving quickly and establishing the board, as well as getting the governor's appointments as soon as possible, which we also help with in Tallahassee, try and get those expedited so that the governor understands that this is a new organization. But those are the types of things that you all as a board need to start considering when you're building the timeline, and kind of beginning with the end in mind, which is that you all in 2021 November will start actually collecting those ad valorem dollars to hopefully put on the street and begin services. Rewind that back out to your first trim hearing that needs to be prepared for. You probably want an executive director in place. You probably want a CFO in place to set up the accounting and the chart of accounts. And you probably really want a program director in place who's really going to help think through what the funding process is going to look like and what are the requests for proposals from service providers that are going to be out for review and on the street ready to go, so that there's not a huge lag from the day you get the dollars into your coffers to the time that those are spent on actual services. And so those are really just the opportunities where the Florida Children's Council has been working with your transition team and hopes to work with you all to really help and guide you through this process, bring you what other communities have done, answer your questions, and really be able to help be a thought partner to you all as you all are navigating this new information. What I can tell you is that this first year is going to be a huge infrastructure year. Really thinking through what is the infrastructure, looking at the community needs assessment, thinking about what's really viable in the first year for funding. It doesn't mean if a service provider doesn't get funding the first year that it's not a path forward and that there's no ability for that provider to get funding. It's more about how you can get those dollars out, how you can start measuring impact and move forward. And that really is the decisions that are in front of you as a board to really start thinking through those comprehensive services, as well as a lot of that administrative information as well. So I'm going to take a quick break there and see if there's any questions, because I know that I just gave you a lot of information.
I have a question, Patty Hightower. When you're saying that we need to have an executive director, program director, all those things, in the other councils, do they put those people in place before they have all of their appointed members in place? Do the 5 that start make those decisions?
So that is an excellent question. So I can tell you that Alachua County, which is the newest county, which I know that Escambia and both Leon are modeling a lot of their process on. What they did is the minute they had the 15 applicants in place, they started meeting with the 15 applicants and the 5 mandated board members. And so that they could start really hearing the community conversation, especially as they were looking at the needs of the community, looking at what areas they might prioritize for funding year 1. Alachua, I do want to be quite honest, they were standing up their children's trust right when Governor DeSantis took over leadership. So his appointments came out really slow. They took 18 months to appoint those governor's appointees. We're really hoping that that's not the case, that the appointments office is kind of hitting its stride. And so what Alachua did is they met with all of the applicants with the intention that, thank you so much for being interested in the well-being of children in your community. Even if the governor does not appoint you, please find a way to plug in and be part of the community and part of the conversation, because we never know when a member is going to potentially leave, or the fact that, you know, services for your community, please continue. So what they did is they invited all of the applicants along with the five mandated. They looked at all of the resumes. The five had the final decision making, obviously from a legal standpoint, but it was all very open and transparent. So what I would say is that do not wait for your full board, because I feel like if you don't get an appointment, especially with COVID, until June, there's a lot of things that are happening where you're going to have a signatory authority from either the chair or the vice chair, whoever that might be that you elect, that is going to have to do some really significant work in order to get ready for TRIM, to get really ready for the funding process, to identify the needs. And so ideally, you would at least want an executive director in place if you can't necessarily get a CFO or a program director in enough time.
I had a question because I'm just sort of unfamiliar with the process that went on to establish the transition team, and this might be to the county administrator. You mentioned that one of the roles is to work with the transition team on some of the things that have to happen. It sounded to me as though the county and the transition team were not completely aligned. That was more of a community effort to develop the transition team. Has that transition team been designated as an authority for the county, or can they speak for the county to the help coming from Tallahassee, or does that still need to be worked on?
Madam Administrator, I don't know if we voted to officially appoint any group or transition team. Maybe you can.
No, not necessarily. I mean, I think this was an issue where it was a community effort, and then the community came together, and then the team that worked to get it passed and promoted then came together and tried to make sure that we met the steps, the statutory steps, the obligations that Michelle mentioned, whether we did our notifications and the other things that we had to do to properly follow the statutes for the first 30, 60 days.
So has our staff and our legal department been engaged as obviously
Okay,
we
so,
wrote the ordinance.
yeah, I mean, so we did create applications, and then we have posted them. We provided this beautiful facility for your use. We also have staff that's here making sure that this is available on ECTV, and they're also taping it. And then we have also provided, let's see, applications. I'm trying to think of all the things that we've done. So we've tried to work in regard to try and do the things that were supportive. Oh, you asked about council. Council did answer the questions about, we've talked about designating a registered agent, and we talked about that the five of you could sit as the governing board as a quorum until the others are appointed. So those are the actions that I believe we've taken. There may be others.
Yeah, I know Madam Council said she'd work to get a registered agent today.
Well,
when I
yeah,
met
they
with her.
have, yeah.
I quite frankly don't know how we would have all gotten here together today if it hadn't been for our volunteers.
Correct.
Absolutely, yeah, yeah. We're very grateful.
Yes, absolutely. I don't know how this would have ever happened otherwise.
Correct.
So am I
So
correct?
we've coordinated in that regard. I mean,
Are you able to identify a staff person to work with this council and to help facilitate this, Ms. Gilly?
so part of our conversation early on was that due to COVID and due to the hurricane and things like that had happened, we just didn't have capacity for staff, to be totally honest with you. As you know, we've been going through about 7 or 8,000 CARES applications with our neighborhood and human services staff, different staff that we have. I do have special projects person in our office, Zanani Johnson. She's here this evening. And Zanani has been able to help as we've needed, like she's helping with the TDC and some other groups. So from that perspective, we have staff that would certainly be able to help take minutes and things like that. From an executive director position, I think you're looking at a job description. I think you're looking at a posting for a
No,
particular
I'm not referring to that.
individual.
I'm saying get to the point where we hire an executive director, because I
Yeah,
think we
yes.
have
I
to
mean,
have
I
somebody
think-
that wakes up
I
every day
think
thinking
that's-
about this.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are the administrative things, like providing you facilities, providing you minutes, providing you, emails to make sure that you, invites to get here. Those are the administrative things that I think we could do. But I do think we would need a job description and an executive director to be posted.
Right, absolutely. We understand that.
So that kind of leads me back to my question.
Push a button. Sorry.
That kind of leads me back to my question that I thought may fall under this umbrella, which is money. I mean, the mention was made of staff. Who is our staff? How do we get a staff? And then Ms. Watson mentioned a line of credit, which kind of piqued my
Yeah, a line of
curiosity
credit,
because
yeah.
I don't know how we operate. I mean, I don't know how we operate.
So our board actually mentioned potentially the board and the school board potentially splitting a line of credit that first year, if I remember correctly. I'd have to go back and look at the minutes for sure. But I believe there was a conversation that, our two governing boards could come together and split a line of credit, because I'm assuming people will pay their taxes next year. So if you are able to get organized and do the millage and then levy that as this board, levy it to the community, then you would get the tax
And
rate.
Ms. Gillian, and I can't recall, I mean, we've gone through so much, and I do remember asking, what you said about the county commission and school board. Was the city included as well?
I did not remember the city being mentioned that evening. I just remembered specifically the school board and the county, because you
Okay.
both were going to have appointments on this original 5.
Right.
But nothing was transferred to the school board. I just want to be on the record. I watched the meeting.
Yeah, and it was 250, or I can't.
Yeah, but I mean, there's been no formal request.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I mean, I
Be
think
on
that
the
would come,
record with that.
that would
But
come
that's
from this
what come from
board.
tonight.
I mean, yeah, I mean, I think that this board would have to decide
Yeah.
exactly
Well,
who we're
you know-
going to request for funding.
Is Michelle's, no,
Oh, she disappeared.
and maybe Kim knows the answer to this. I know that we are operating as a children's trust council. We are representatives of different governing bodies. But are we not kind of our independent group once we
Yes.
get?
Yeah, we
ourselves-
are, we levy,
They're an
no,
independent
no, it no
special
longer gets
district.
levied by the county.
I-
Absolutely,
yeah,
we levy
I
just like the
keep
school
hearing you
board.
say the county needs to do this, the county needs to do that.
I got the
so-
same text you got from the same person. So, we're.
I didn't get a text from anybody.
We don't levy it.
You have taxing authority.
Yeah,
well,
we're the taxing
that's-
authority.
That was,
Yeah.
because the school board has taxing authority and, but I would just want to, it sounded like he was expecting the county to do a lot of things, and it seems to me that we're here to set up a council.
Yep,
that-
and Patty, I stand corrected.
Okay.
And there
Well,
are,
and-
as we heard from Michelle, there are different paths, and there's no wrong way.
Yeah, my line of questioning around the transition team was about how we could establish authority so that they can work with Ms. Watson as a support entity for this effort. Because it sounds like the transition team is already in play, has already done a lot to get us here tonight, has already done a lot to motivate the community. And it would almost seem like we would want to make a more formal relationship of that transition team to give them the authority to work with Ms. Watson, so she knows she's working with the trust when she's working with the transition team, and not a body of volunteers who are doing it on their own. So I wanted to talk about the potential for that opportunity tonight, if we could.
Well, and I'd like to ask, just for a point of clarification, my understanding coming into this is that the transition team was leading the efforts, and tonight is a handing over, in essence, of the work activity to this board, which then I think does necessitate us to look at how our decision-making process takes place. So if the 5 of us represent a quorum, that's certainly a significant factor. When we're talking about executive directors and further positions, that's a whole another level. But I do hear very clearly that for us to proceed, there are some deadlines that appear to be rather important, especially if we're getting into conversations about trim and looking at how we position ourselves and how we are postured to have the revenue start to come forward. So I think those are some important things for us to just keep in mind so that we meet those critical deadlines so the body can move forward.
Superintendent, and I agree, because we don't want to miss any deadlines or any dates, so I think it's critical to make sure that we have everything implemented and in place to meet any deadlines that we're approaching. So I agree with you.
So, Ms. Watson or Ms. Krupa, I mean, what is your suggestion then? What is the first thing we need to do sitting here?
Right, so we kind of try to put this in a little bit of an order with the bylaws. I'm hearing that we might want to skip over that, but we definitely need to be electing a chair and vice chair. And then designating the registered agent. That's a 30-day within your first board meeting, which is today, requirement. And then we have that first year to-do list to talk about. And that agenda item 10 has a one-page attachment at the back of your packet. And so we would propose if we wanted to skip over bylaws. I think I heard that you all wanted to do
And
that.
could I ask, is Ms. Watson done with her presentation, or did she have more? She said she was pausing for questions, but she may have more.
She probably does, and she's going to be in numerous agenda items.
Okay. I just want to make sure she had finished with this one.
Yeah, go ahead, Ms.
So
Watson.
So I think, as you all designate the transition team to feel free to work with the Florida Children's Council, obviously we are here to be a support to both the board, the county, the transition team, whoever you have us work with. I would say when it comes to position descriptions and determining what are the qualifications of the person you want as executive director, that is something that probably needs to be at least discussed with the board chair, whoever is elected. And what we work to do is we work to get you all of the position descriptions from the current executive directors or the CEOs of the CSCs. So you can do some really comparative analysis on pay scale, on qualifications. I think that is something, though, that the board really needs to own, more so than a volunteer group, since it will be your leader moving forward. And so that's just my recommendation on that. As far as a potential,
Ms. Watson, can I
yes,
interrupt?
sir.
Can I interrupt you? Would you say in the councils that you set up, and I know we got to do this immediately, and I'm quite frankly willing to do it at the next meeting, an interim director, or would the interim be the person that you would see as the person that goes, or would the interim person be the person that has the CFO and sets it up and kind of the visionary, or would you think that we hire the permanent person immediately? What would be your thoughts?
So I think it depends, and a lot of it depends on the community. So I'm just going to give you some background in Leon, just so you know that they're looking at hiring an interim director. As part of some of the conversations that they had around their referendum, there was some community conversations that they were starting a Leon County Children's Services Children's Services Council, because it was meant to be a position for somebody very specific in the community. That was not true at all. So they're bringing in an interim director who has a background of a lawyer, ran a statewide not-for-profit for many years, and just retired. As somebody who could potentially come in, help stand up the organization, complete the tasks that need to be completed, and then when they are moving along as a board, really do a more formal search.
Is that kind of
doesn't
what
have-
Gainesville did as well?
No, Gainesville, because they had
should tell us.
two county positions that supported the stand-up of the trust, They had 2 dedicated county positions to do that interim work. So I think you all can determine if you want an interim executive director to really help with those administrative tasks, and then bring on and do a search for an executive director moving forward. Or if you want to go straight to an executive director, understanding the needs of your community and what your community expects from an open and transparent search.
Thank you.
Hearing that, do we still want to skip over item 7, the bylaws review, and postpone that to possibly February?
I would like a Word version of the bylaws to work in. I made a bunch of notes on them, but I would agree that I don't think that that would be appropriate for tonight based on, I just think it would take too long to go through all
Yeah.
my questions and
I agree.
suggestions.
Could you resend them out and then let us add and
I think I got
bring
them
them
in
back?
a PDF, but if I could get them in a Word, that would be very helpful.
Wonderful.
And if it would be, if it would be helpful from the Florida Children's Council perspective, we can also give you some bylaws of other CSCs
That would be
for
great.
That'd be
comparison,
awesome.
if that would be really helpful, so that you know how other CSCs have created their bylaws
Thank you, Ms. Watson,
the-
that would be very helpful.
in the state.
Wonderful. Thank you, Michelle. So one of the critical action items for tonight is the election of the interim chair and vice chair. And you may nominate yourself or another member of the trust, and really recommending that you take that action today so that we can execute some of these deadlines facing us.
Is there anybody who wants the job?
I'd do it if you want me to.
Is there anybody else who wants the job?
Did you want it, Judge?
I'll serve any capacity you want me to serve.
Well, I don't know how we want to do this. If there's somebody who wants to do it, if there's
I'm happy to do
no
chair or
election.
co-chair, either one, Pat. I'm nominated.
Which one would you rather be?
If you want to be chair, I'll be co-chair. If you want to be co-chair, I'll be chair.
Vice, it's not
Vice
co.
chair. Right.
Yeah. Let me be chair. Is that okay with everybody else?
So do we make a motion?
There you go. Seconded.
Okay, make a motion for Patty Hightower to be the chair and Commissioner to be our vice chair.
So, all in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same. There's no opposed, so we're all in favor.
All right.
We have interim chair
Okay,
and
we
a
did
interim
something.
vice chair.
Yay.
Congratulations, Madam Chair.
What do we mean by interim? Do we mean that once we seat the full board, we'd have to take another vote?
Yeah.
That is
We
my
would either
understanding.
confirm the chair and vice chair at that point or have another nomination round.
Right.
And I see Michelle, our expert, nodding her head, so thank you.
Yeah.
So the next action item from this evening is the designation of a registered agent, and this is also an attachment in your packet, item 9 at the back. And
Madam
this-
Administrator, I know we discussed this with Madam Council today. Kim, I don't know who's going to be the registered agent. Was that something that our legal would do or this board would?
Well, we do have a proposal for you that the board designate Buzz Ritchie as the registered agent. He's someone well-respected in this community. He's willing and able to do it. He would have been here tonight, but he is facing a COVID situation. He
Would that
has his
prohibit it?
first vaccine, though.
Would that prohibit him from applying from the interim position as the interim executive director?
I imagine it would be one and the same. And he is not interested in being the official full-time executive director. This would be
But I
an
know he is
interim,
interested in being the interim.
interim registered agent handling the first-year tasks.
So him being
Whether
the registered agent wouldn't prohibit him from being
No.
the interim director?
And it could very well be the same thing.
That's what I was going
As
to
a
ask.
consultant.
Can executive director and registered agent be held by the same person.
I believe so. Michelle?
Since I don't know the name, can you help me? Name and title?
Yes, we actually have his bio printed for you, which we can have distributed.
And I would think that the transition volunteer committee, Buzz would be the recommendation for the interim director, is what I would assume.
It is, sir. We had Jack Brown on our team. He's on virtual, and we had thought that he would have been a good fit, but just not possible at this time. And so Buzz would be our, second recommendation. We didn't want to come here asking you to designate a registered agent without having a recommendation. But obviously, it's your decision.
I know Buzz from long ago when I was an activist parent and would storm the halls of Tallahassee when he was there. That's how I got to know him. He said, "Oh, you're here again." But, I do know he has a heart for children. I do know that he, as a legislator, often proposed things that would be for the betterment of our communities. And so I wholeheartedly would support this action.
Oh, I got you.
Okay, sorry. I just wanted to clarify, I think there was some confusion of terms. A registered agent would be the same as an interim director, not as an executive director, correct? Mr. Ritchie is not interested in being the executive director, he's interested in being the agent interim director. Correct. Okay, thank you.
But he'd be the registered agent. So let me ask a question. Would this prohibit him from applying from being the executive director? Because like Patty, I've known Buzz for many years. And
It wouldn't,
I
but I don't think he's interested in that. He really is interested in the interim piece of that title. But it wouldn't preclude him from doing that. But I think he respects, the transparency and that you would probably want to do a full search with the 10-member board.
And if that's going to be the recommendation, and I know we're not about to vote on who's the interim director tonight, but would it be more appropriate that the chairperson?
We are voting on the interim
We're voting on a
director.
designated,
Registered-
registered
oh, we are.
agent.
That is the same thing, that's what I was just asking.
Yeah.
We are,
Oh,
Not
so
the
the registered agent is the interim director? Okay.
Yes,
and not the executive director.
yes. That's what I understand. Michelle, would that be
And would the
correct?
registered agent have to be the interim executive director? Legally, Ms.
Michelle's going to
Crawford?
answer. No.
No, they do not have to be. The registered agent could be one of you board members. It could be somebody from the county. It could be whoever you designate, and an interim director could be somebody else. However, in an effort to keep things really organized, you would want the registered agent probably to be the same person that's setting up the organization. So it doesn't have to be the same. It is more of a best practice that it is somebody who will be able to document the historical knowledge and the infrastructure and what steps take place as you're moving through the first year tasks.
Madam Chair?
I was asking if there are any other questions? Are there any motions to be made? Are we going to?
I move that we accept Buzz Ritchie as the nomination for the registered agent.
Thank you. Is there any discussion, any further discussion, any questions? Seeing none, those in favor, please raise your right hand. Those opposed, like sign. And we have designated Buzz Ritchie by a vote of 5-0. Next item.
Since Mr. Ritchie is absent tonight, we do know that he's interested in this?
Yeah,
Okay. I
absolutely.
mean, I would imagine if he comes back and says, what did you guys just do to me? We might want to reconsider, but outside of that, I'm very
No,
comfortable.
he knows. He does.
Very good.
I was going to say he is now. If he wasn't, he is now, right?
So item 10, moving along so quickly, is the first year to-do list. And many of the questions that the board has raised have to do with this first year to-do list. This is an informational item, also a point of discussion as you think about the content for your next meetings. We've organized it administrative policy and then required reports in this one-page handout in your packet. But looking at the policy decisions, these are really the critical decisions that the board needs to make. And this has to do with the line of credit that was mentioned earlier. It is a best practice from the survey of other children's services councils that borrowed that line of credit in order to set up these critical functional areas in that interim year, waiting for the official tax levy. Other questions, will the trust join the Florida Children's Council? How will the trust undertake the comprehensive needs assessment that's required by statute? How will the trust address the needs of children? And then what level of financial resources does the trust require, from operations to contracting? And then if we're working backwards from Michelle's proposed timeline of putting dollars back into this community to meet the needs of children this calendar year, that's a lot of activity that needs to happen in the next six months. That July 1 trim deadline is going to be quickly approaching. Looking at an August request for proposals with funding coming down by December, the amount of $250,000 line of credit seems reasonable. And I think that the urgency facing kids and families in this community requires us to move at this speed. And so this to-do list follows sort of an aggressive and ambitious timeline, but also meets the urgency of what we're seeing in the community. And so the board, just items for discussion and possible decision-making or topics to set up the February meeting and subsequent meetings.
Okay, if we get the bylaws out to us in a Word form so that we can make changes, who is designated? Will it be either the chair or the vice chair that will be the recipient of those to put them together for an agenda, or have we authorized the transition team to work with us to do that?
We haven't authorized it. I don't think it's.
No, so that's what I want to, I'm getting information from my board so that we know direction that we want to do, so that we can look at those next month. Okay, so Michelle, do you have something? Did you?
Ms. Crawford.
Ms. Crawford, yes, I'm sorry.
Yeah. I would recommend that you ask Ms. Gilly or Stanley County something like that due to the sunshine requirements.
Absolutely.
Sorry. Due to the sunshine requirements, you're not going to want to gather and compile materials. That would be a violation. Perhaps someone with the county would be able to.
Could we direct and just give it to the county attorney?
Right.
Yeah, I would
Right.
recommend, Patty, that it goes to the
Okay.
county attorney.
Okay.
And then she can disseminate without sunshine violations.
Well, I was going to say you could send it to my assistant, and then that way,
Yeah,
Yeah,
but if we
right.
give it to our attorney, she could keep us all,
okay, so will somebody send us that contact information?
yep, Ms. Gilly will.
Okay. And then we've got the registered agent. Are we in fact registered with the property appraiser, tax collector, and that stuff has been done, as I understand it, but I just want to be sure. Has that been done or not? Or is that something that we need
We've
to do?
met all of the deadlines
Yeah.
as of this moment. I'm not sure that specifically if we've done that, but I can ask Jack Brown.
Okay. Okay. All right.
Well, I would think we would need to know if it's been done or not, because I would think we would need to direct it to be done by someone if it hasn't
Well,
been done.
we can have a motion that if it hasn't been done, that we direct the transition team to get it done, or,
I think first we need to have a discussion about what the board thinks about the transition team and to give them some
Okay.
authority so that we can do that.
Okay.
I think that was part of the concern of
yeah.
the commission.
So,
So
discuss?
I would move to recognize the transition team for the limited purpose, I guess, of being able to assist us in these endeavors that they have so graciously given their times to. Again, I don't want to step outside of statute and give authority where authority is not due, but at the same time, I do agree you know, we would be nothing without them at this point.
Well, and it may be that Commissioner May and I have to do whatever paperwork is necessary as chair and vice chair when they decide whether we have some additional steps to make. So, because
there
it
a
says
second to my
authorized
motion?
signatures and those kind of things, so.
Is the transition team defined as a certain number of people? Do we know what the body looks like?
Yes, they're on our email.
Yeah,
Not-
That's a
not
good
officially,
question.
yeah.
I had the same question too, is do we have a specific number of people? And, you know, how do we have that organized as well?
Right, we're just sort of a loose group of 5. I mean, you guys can stand up, the transition team members, plus Michelle. Yes, and your registered agent can execute these
Okay.
filing deadlines and requirements with our support.
So the transition team can support our agent then? And Are we all comfortable with that?
Yeah, I mean, I think at some point we come back to the next meeting, not on this transition team. I think, Madam Chairperson, we begin to look at ad hoc subcommittees and performing duties that we need. And quite frankly, this transition team could be one, and there may be other different communities that we do appoint in our mission. And I think that's a further discussion.
Yeah,
Because that committee will have to be diverse. It will have, this is a tax of 300,000 citizens, and it's going to be critical that it's just not a loose 5 people that have gotten together. I'm not going to be supportive of that.
Well-
And so we can figure out when we come back, you know, what committees do we need to be
Well-
representative of the entire community?
And I think that, that the people that are applying to sit on this council would be a good source, and by the time that we have our next meeting, so we'll have to discuss when that will be, we'll have those people as also as possibility of people that would serve in different capacities.
And different committees, and
until
those
they
that
get
would
there.
not be appointed by the governor, absolutely,
Yeah.
Patty, I agree with you.
Yeah, because we won't have that.
Because they've shown an interest
Yeah.
in doing this, and so
Yeah.
we want everyone that wants to serve, I mean, and I agree with the honorable judge, I mean, everybody
Those
that wants to
people that
give
are
their
here
time,
today.
we want to utilize their skills. And so I would hold to say that, as we put the structure together, Patty, as we come back, to create those committees. And quite frankly, this transition team probably would be chair people of many different committees.
I would suggest, Commissioner May, that the 2 of us sit down with the transition team and structure the next meeting, so that then we can let the,
Can you do that?
then we,
But we'd have to advertise
I was about to
that.
say, I don't think you could do that without.
that's true, that's true.
If we
I could- I
advertised
could
it,
sit
we
down
could.
with them.
You could, you could sit down, and then I could sit down.
Yeah.
But we'd have to advertise it.
Yeah, but I'm trying to figure out a way that they are a transition team, and they're going to support us, but eventually we got to take it.
Well, I mean, I think transition means, I mean, that you transition to the governing board. And tonight, we've established the governing board. And so we have the responsibility, and with the responsibility comes the authority to make
Yeah.
decisions.
Yeah.
And so at this point, we're all giving of our time. And so we should be able to take a nice handoff from our transition team and able to form, in my opinion, Patty,
Okay.
the subcommittees to perform the duties. Obviously, all of us can't do it, even if we have 10 members. We're not all in the same walk of life.
That's true.
So I withdraw my motion.
And Madam Chair,
Thank you.
For-
Yes, ma'am.
just to make a connection, as you all are reviewing the bylaws, make sure that you do allow for the authority to have ad hoc and subcommittees as you come together. So I just wanted to, as you're thinking through that structure, I would just make sure the bylaws support that moving forward.
Yeah, Ms. White, and that was one of my reasons why I just recommended that to the chairperson of the ad hoc and the subcommittee. So in my conversation with people that I know, that the
They're in
subcommittees
here.
are important.
Their structure is in here, in the bylaws, as they are now, so.
On item 10, at the bottom, there's a list of required reports that have bullets, but only 2 have firm deadlines that are here. Do we know of the other deadlines for the other bulleted items?
Yes, those are forthcoming depending on the timeline you all embrace. So if you are setting this up in a position to release taxpayer dollars in 2021, then your quarterly report to the Board of County Commission would probably come at the end of 2021. Versus if you wait until 2022, the calendar would shift.
Does the ordinance speak to the identifying plan and the timing for it, or is that solely our decision when to start?
The ordinance is more specific, I believe.
So this board, we can decide when we start.
Yes. And so what we're looking at in some of the other items in that first year to-do list is, front and center is this needs assessment, this required needs assessment. Ideally completed quickly, as we had heard in the county commission meeting in December. We already know a lot of what our needs are. I included a couple of reports on your desks that are the most recent community reports in 2020 and 2019, along with an executive summary. We know what our greatest gaps are. We don't think that we have to kind of reinvent the wheel here, but we do want to be intentional about making sure we get community input. So, being able to stand a lot of the data that's already captured against the community, what the community wants, and building that into our process is something that would be a best practice for Escambia County, making sure we reach all populations, all geographies, and really leave no corner unturned. And so the first year to-do list matches a process that looks like this, where we're doing the needs assessment community, we collectively, community as the board decides, but that we're engaging the community and identifying the greatest needs. And then along with that, training and education to the provider community to be able to compete for a forthcoming request for proposal, whether that's 2021 or 2022. Bringing equity to the process, building the capacity of providers to submit successful applications for funding is incredibly important to this process, and that we're developing a process that is tiered. And so, providers that are always closer to the problems that we're trying to solve often don't have the resources, the administrative bandwidth, the nonprofit grant writer, to submit an application and kind of go up against the more resourced nonprofits. We want to level the playing field and be really careful to reach out to the provider community and make education and training lockstep with the release of taxpayer dollars. Michelle, would love for you to add anything on that. These two slides are recommendations from the Florida Children's Council.
Absolutely. Many of our communities, obviously, there are need in every sector of your community, and we also know that small not-for-profits often don't have an opportunity, don't feel like they can be successful. And so many of our children's services councils around the states have started provider boot camps where they allow and work with and have a dedicated resource to really work with these smaller sector service providers to make sure that they are ready to understand what it looks like to collect taxpayer dollars, what the evidence-based programs and the measurement is going to be around the outcomes of those programs, as well as the fiduciary responsibilities of those programs. And it's been embraced really well in other communities so that everybody feels like that they can continue their mission in a comprehensive service delivery. And so it's really important that there be that tiered process in place to move forward. I definitely think that Walter, in speaking about the Department of Children and Families, one of the things that was allowed in the Family First Prevention Services Act, which is the reauthorization for DCF, is that our children's services councils around the state can actually draw down match dollars for prevention services. So we want to make sure that as we're allowed, as your CSC determines to draw down match dollars from the federal government to bring more resources to your community and maximize the tax levy from the citizens, that everybody understands what is absolutely needed to move forward in receiving that funding, as well as developing a comprehensive prevention service delivery model. So there are opportunities. The first year of funding is going to be how you can get that money on the street and who's ready to accept it. It doesn't necessarily mean that that's what it's always going to look like. And so you all have to really build a thoughtful, long-range service plan that slowly brings service providers in to really meet your comprehensive strategies and needs throughout your community. And that does take time. But as you all are setting up the administration, allowing providers to understand what they absolutely need to be successful is integral to the success of the Children's Trust of Escambia County.
So as I was thinking about the fact that we now have a designated agent interim director that can help us create the structure that we need as well, and help us create that as a council. So at this time, we need to set a date for the next meeting? Is that where we are basically at this time?
Yes.
And Mr. Ritchie will be joining us at the next meeting.
Yes, and based on initial scheduling, the third Thursday seemed to work with your schedules. And
Thursdays
then-
are horrible for me, and I apologize
I
that,
don't know how that was.
yeah, and I apologize for us. I mean, we typically have meetings every Thursday, and so we just had a day meeting this time, but it's a long day. We've been here since 8 o'clock this morning. So Thursdays are just horrible for me.
And so Mondays or Wednesdays during other weeks of the month.
Monday would be great. Monday or Wednesday
I
would
can't
be
do
great.
Mondays.
Well, I mean, Wednesdays isn't typically a great day, outside of COVID for a lot of people in the community who go to church on Wednesday nights.
Yeah, we heard that Wednesday was a no-go.
I could meet later on Monday. I
What
have
about
a-
earlier? Can you do a noon? Well, you probably can't.
Heck no.
Well, you can't,
She can't do noon.
you can't do any meetings, yeah.
I could do like 6:30 on a Monday. I
Wow.
just can't do 6. I have an obligation every Monday. Not during COVID, things have been a little different, but, don't know when that'll stop, and I'll have to get back to
Well, can we do
going to
Monday
the
the
place.
22nd at 6:30, Patty? I mean, I can come at 6:30. You good with that? I just can't do it Thursday.
I think we were looking.
Unless, Madam Administrator, you know exactly, is there a Thursday we don't have any, I don't know, it's probably not a Thursday we don't have anything, though, in this chamber. I hate the 6:30 meeting, Patty, but if that's what it,
And Walter, you're coming from Tallahassee.
I will be here anytime, any day. You call it, I'll show up. I'm ultimately when you're the regional director, you got
You go-
800 people that work for you, you can set your schedule.
can you do the 22nd at 6:30, Patty?
22nd of February?
Yeah.
15th is a holiday.
Yeah,
Yep.
15th holiday, so I was saying the 22nd of February at 6:30.
I can do that.
All right, let's set it for that.
I mean, are we setting the 4th Monday, or do you want to?
I think at this next meeting, let's set it once we get buzzed in
Okay,
and
all
everybody.
right.
Let's just- let-
Well,
let's-
So
yeah,
we'll,
yeah.
we'll set it for February 22nd at 6:30. I might commit at 6 on the 22nd.
Oh, well, we would appreciate
Well, I
Would
mean,
that
that
be
would be
better for
great.
you?
That would be better, but
All
I
right,
mean,
I can do it
don't
6.
pressure yourself. but-
Well, I don't think we're going to be doing what I have
Are
to
you
do.
comfortable with 6?
Yeah, I have handbell practice. Let me just be,
What kind of practice?
handbells.
Oh.
So it's, if I'm not there, there's a hole, so,
Right, yeah.
but I could do 6 if we're not going to stay on Mondays. could
Yeah,
do
I mean, I
6
don't want to
this
be here
time.
at 8 o'clock. I mean,
Okay.
yeah.
6 p.m. on February 22nd, and we'll meet here.
Right.
And Madam Chair, that would mean that the 4th, I guess, will have passed, or the 18th will have passed, so we would have the input from the county at that point on the 15
Absolutely.
applicants.
Absolutely.
And you would have potentially had your meeting with the registered agent and potentially the transition team on some other deadlines and things that could be worked on.
Yes.
I don't know if it necessarily needs to be a motion, but my suggestion on the bylaw issue is that if you are going to make proposed changes or submit your own, or you have comments or questions, that at least those, if they're going to come out to us tomorrow, for instance, that they be given to us, 3, 4, 5 days in advance so that we can all
Absolutely.
look at each other's,
Right,
before we come in.
yeah.
I mean, but they're all going to be going to a person, and we're not going to be able to get them back. Right, that's what I'm saying, I guess. That can't come back to us.
Well, I
We said we
think
didn't
that,
we said we didn't need a sunshine update, but
well, I
The
don't know
documents
that,
cannot come.
I don't know
Okay.
that you want to send out the suggestions. You can use your copy and make your edits on it, then bring it to the next meeting.
Correct. You can't use a third party, including council, to share information, even though you're making,
But council could
additions or
redline them
revisions
and
to-
just bring all of the changes to that meeting and hand
Right,
them
and
out
if
at
it
that
were
meeting.
like on an agenda, if it's on an agenda or something like
Right,
that, you
but
can
it's
see the
that.
changes,
Yeah.
absolutely, because that's,
Right.
publicly noticed in the sunshine, all of that. But as far as, sharing what one, member has done to the document with another member prior to, for your information, that
That's-
Well, I
wouldn't
didn't
work.
think we were going to be working off the same document. I guess my point is, I mean, potentially it's going to be a very, very long meeting if we are going to go line by line and make changes. I mean, that was kind of my thought, is that if people had proposed changes and we could all be given that material, but if we want to wait and do it all, on the record, we could do that.
But I think
know
if
I've
the-
had a lot of comments and questions and red lines, so, I
Oh,
mean,
well, I've seen enough bylaws in my day in different organizations that, I want to hear what you have to say, but they covered, I mean, I had a checklist of things I was looking for, and they were here. Because I've
But I
done
mean, we could
bylaws with them.
almost, no, I wouldn't say rubber stamp, but I mean, we could have a consensus on things that have not been redlined. If someone redlined it,
Well,
and
I
then
mean,
it could be
you know,
brought up and discussed.
And I think sometimes, I'm in the education community, so I'm used to seeing it the way we've got it here. Other areas of expertise would see it differently and may have questions about why they would do it this way. The one thing I was looking for was quorum. I had a hard time finding where the quorum was, but I finally found it. Knowing that we're working, it was 5, eventually we'll be 10, and those kind of things. And there's a lot of things that are covered here. I'm not saying that there's not some changes that are needed. So I don't see there's any reason to not want to go through it unless,
okay. Well, then I'll
You're-
just submit mine, and then it
Yeah.
could just be, I don't mind it being attached to the agenda as Judge Fedorovich's proposed changes, and then we could have the side-by-side, discussion, that's fine.
And Ms. Watson said she would share some of the other bylaws with us from the other CSCs, so we need to have that come in, so when we're making notes, we can have comparative
Right.
information. Ms. Watson, what's the turnaround time on getting those samples?
We can get those for you tomorrow.
okay. That way, we can look and see what we've left out that they've got in them. So, I guess one of the reasons I thought it was basically covering the things that I went to Alachua County's Children's Trust site, and I was reading their bylaws, so.
I have a question for Ms.
Okay.
Watson. Is there a possibility of you sending to us exemplar organizations in the state or outside of the state that have had superb results through their Children's Trust organization?
Thank you, Superintendent. I wanted to say the same thing. I mean, I can't imagine that every single one has worked great. I mean, I'd love to see, I'd like to see examples, in your opinion, of those who've worked well and those who have not worked quite so well. I mean, because, we don't want to make the same mistakes that others
right.
have made. So I would be honored if you would just send that, and very grateful.
Absolutely. One of the things that we can make sure that we get out to you is all of our CSCs as part. You all will have to as well. We'll have to publish an annual report of everything that was funded and what are the outcome results of those initiatives that were funded. So we can get you copies of annual reports, copies of board books and budgets that you can look at. And you are absolutely right. There are some CSCs who have funded an initiative and realized that they weren't getting the outcome measures and the evidence-based programming that they thought they were investing in, and you as a body have the ability to no longer contract for that service with that service provider. And so that's what's really important about really thinking through what the funding process is going to look like. We will not leave you to your own devices. There are people that have come before you for 30 years. We can get you requests for proposals. We can get you funding processes from the other CSCs, and then that way you can really look at what other communities have done before you and what's worked. I'm not saying that your needs are the same as every community's, but there is overlap in some of the demonstrable needs from community to community, and we're just here to be a resource and help you. So happy to get you whatever you need, including position descriptions, accounting software being used, everything else. We are kind of your technical assistance team that you need at any time.
And Superintendent Smith, it's, for me, that's why it's so important that we incorporate all the work that Achieve Escambia has done. I mean, United Way with community impact studies and understanding not what the 5 or 10 of us want or what a subcommittee want, but what does this community expect out of these investment dollars that they're bringing forth. And so exactly, you know, we're not going to solve every problem, but what are our long-term, short-term, intermediate goals? What are the expected outcomes, and how do we hold ourselves accountable while everybody else holds us accountable as well? So I like your idea of looking at other communities to see exactly what did they do to be successful, because I mean, we don't need to reinvent the wheel. If Leon, Leon just talked about if Alachua or some other county's doing it right, I mean, let's just join in and do what they're doing. But I'm very interested,
I'd like
and quite
to not
frankly,
make the same mistakes that they may have found that they made, that they would tell us we shouldn't do that.
So I mean, Superintendent, I would say this publicly. I'm going to lean to you because I like everything that you say about the achievement gap. I love everything that you say about readiness, and those type of expected outcomes are where I'm going to be supportive. And I would, quite frankly, lean to you for your leadership and your guidance on those expected outcomes as we coordinate those with the school district.
Well, Mr. Vice Chair May, thank you very much for that. I think that's one of the things that is so fantastic about what has happened here in the community is, and why I'm so honored to be a part of this fine organization, is the transition team, the community. There are so many positive initiatives taking place. Achieve Escambia is a great example. And I think we have a great opportunity here to really do something very, very special for our children. So thank you for that. Appreciate it.
Thank you. I'm excited to serve with you. I mean, in our brief conversations, and Walker Wilson was here earlier, but I think that the Children's Trust Fund begins to shorten that gap of what you said, the achievement gap. And quite frankly, you know, I would say this in a public meeting, the way in which this tax was marketed, the recipients in which they utilize their pictures and their posters in the underserved and disadvantaged community. If we fail to provide those resources, then we failed our citizens. And so, you know, I would not be an adversary, but quite frankly, I will be a steward of what we've done in terms of asking the community. We know what the issues are, and every community is unique and different, and Escambia County is no different. But quite frankly, if we fail to provide those resources to the very people that we utilize to get support for this tax, then we fail this community. And so that would,
Well said.
that's going to be my position. And so I think you have eloquently talked about that in every meeting that I've seen you at. So, I mean, we know the problem with black and brown children in the inner city, and, you know, and we utilize them, quite frankly, to get this tax. And so they should not be the recipient of hand-me-downs, but they should be the recipients of the resources that we've been provided. And, you know, I'm not going to be one that's going to support, and I said this when this committee came, spending all of the money administratively and providing high-paying jobs while the very children that we utilize to raise these taxes are still suffering and not getting the resources that they deserve. So I'm excited about putting those goals and those objectives. And so when we talk about bylaws, there are bylaws that I want to go, but obviously this board needs to set goals that we want to attain and then hold ourselves accountable to taxpayers of whether or not we achieve those goals.
Absolutely. And that was a question I had as I was reading things that we had to get done. One of the things that's a requirement is a needs assessment, and you were talking about it, and I'm not sure we finished that conversation, about whether we need to do an additional needs assessment, or can we use the information that Achieve Escambia has already given us, as far as,
And Patty,
key
I mean, I don't,
findings.
for me, I mean, I would not be support, Patty, you and I've been, me and you served on the Watchdog Committee 25 years ago. We know the need in Escambia County.
Yeah.
It has not changed.
But I think it's a requirement that we have to do one.
Yeah, I mean, whatever we have to
That's why
require
I'm asking
statutorily.
what we have to
But
do.
we know
Yeah.
as leaders, as
Yeah, we
think
know.
leaders, where it is. But whatever we have to do statutorily with the Hall Center or whatever to check that box, I'm supportive.
Yeah.
But Pensacola, the county, the city, and school board, we have box loads, car loads, shelves, and offices full of studies
Yes.
identifying the same problem
Yeah.
with the same systemic results that we've had.
Well,
So
that's-
I'm not interested in spending a lot of money on results. I'm interested in partnering with people like the Hall Center that will perform that without utilizing dollars. I want every possible dollar to go to direct services for
Well,
me.
that's why I'm asking if we have to actually do another one.
Yeah, I don't know.
Can we use the
Yeah.
information that we have, or is it a requirement?
We can get around, we can figure out that.
Watson is nodding
Ms.
her head.
Watson
She's
is
nodding and
shaking her
shaking.
head.
Go ahead, Michelle.
Absolutely. The requirement in statute is that a need assessment be performed. It doesn't say that you have to have an original needs assessment from a third-party entity. It can actually be a compilation of different needs assessment and data sets within your community that paints the picture of need. So if you are just looking for a culmination to come together and look at that, it doesn't have to be a true needs assessment that's done by an independent third party. I'm not saying in a few years, as you provide services and have more collective impact and outcome measures, that you might not want to do a more rigorous needs assessment. But for this first year, the need is still the need that was identified during the campaign. You just probably need to look at any new data sources that have been unveiled, determine, make sure that it's comprehensive, and move forward, and that'll check the statutory box.
Thank you. So I think we have,
Absolutely. Great job, Patty.
Yeah.
That's why you're chairperson.
Madam Chair, I'd like to comment too. In my time in Leon, and I think Michelle may have been involved in some of this, we did a year-long planning council effort prior to the vote with an education for the community. And in that time, we had a lot of presentations from executive directors of Children's Services Councils and chairpersons, not necessarily the ED, but maybe a member of the board. And I found that very educational. And with Zoom and other functionality that we have nowadays, I think that would be very easy to accomplish. And I think Michelle would be happy to set that up. But I would encourage that we look at a more like area to Escambia than maybe some that are in the community. I mean, Miami probably would not be a good one to represent because that's $100 million. That's not going to be generated from this tax base. Beautiful for Miami, but not going to happen here. So I think Michelle can help us identify which ones would be good. And having been in the Hillsborough area, that executive director, that board did not mind talking about their mistakes. It's very educational and very enlightening to hear, we thought this was a good idea, we will never do it again because it didn't work out. That's very informative and useful, and I think it would be good for us to have some of that as we go through the summer to continue to educate the full board when it's in place.
I think it's going to be wonderful having him on our council. Someone who has sat in those seats and can share those experiences with us. So,
You will have an incredible day when the children who are rewarded for the services that we provide stand in front of you and do presentations. It's awesome.
I love it at the schools, so I know it'll be awesome here
Yeah.
too. Okay, so
That transitions us to our next meeting agenda content, which you all have touched on, how to identify needs of children and programming opportunities, administrative functions and staffing, discussion of millage rates, budget development.
Madam Chairman, I'm good with you getting with them and setting the agenda, quite frankly, as a chairman. I mean, that's how we operate, so if you want
Okay.
to set the agenda, what's important,
okay,
I'm
but
supportive
these
of
are
that.
things that we're agreed that we need to put on the next month's agenda, correct?
With the addition of the bylaws.
With the addition of the
Yeah,
bylaws.
I would suggest that ethics training, again, be one of those areas that everybody's going to need.
Mm-hmm.
And until the full board is seated, it's just going to have to be done twice. So I
And
don't
all
think
of
that should
us-
happen at the next agenda.
I'm sure all of us, I know,
By statute, we have to do it.
we all have to do 4 hours a year, so. And I did
Yeah,
that,
I think we're good.
yeah. Okay,
The only thing I would add, Madam Chair, is money. I think that's an unresolved topic. Michelle has a cost. The new registered agent will have a cost. And so I would urge you to either revisit that or put that front and center
Is
on the
that-
February agenda.
are those figures, I don't remember seeing them, are they somewhere in here?
No, we did not include that specific
Okay.
number.
And you
That,
said a $250,000 line of credit, but I don't know how you came up with that number or.
sure, and Michelle can speak to that.
Absolutely. So when we looked at past communities that are of like size, and when we surveyed them for what their line of credit was, they found $250,000 was appropriate enough to be able to enter into lease agreements, to be able to start paying an executive director if you onboard them and staff for at least a period of 3 to 6 months, depending on their pay scale. And we can give you, obviously, like communities, pay scales for those key positions, as well as purchasing computer equipment and items that are needed to actually stand up and do those administrative tasks. So $250,000 is appropriate. As far as the Florida Children's Council is concerned, you all can signal membership into the council at any time. We actually don't assess dues until you all receive your dollars from the ad valorem taxes. So that is not a necessity that you have to pay for immediately. We can still be here to help you, but we actually don't want to take money that you all have on a line of credit. We would rather you just join the association and the other CSCs.
What is the
You
cost
all
of
are
joining the association?
It depends on your ad valorem. It is based on your ad valorem, and it's a range. I can send you our dues schedule. I think for your community, based on some initial, what the campaign used as dollars that would be coming in would be about $12,000 a year.
So, yeah, I'd be interested in that. I mean, I think, Madam Administrator, in our brief discussion, that they're in some office space, computers, there's
Yeah,
some
that's
things
what I was
that
gonna ask
I think that, I can't speak for Patty for the school board, but I know that we're willing to.
That's what I was going to ask, if we had designated office space.
We
and
have,
those kind of
I think
things.
we could find office space and
Yeah.
computer and
Yeah.
technical help.
And so, and I'm just suggesting this, if you wanted to consider that as a body, now that you're organized, if you wanted to submit a letter to the school board and to the county commission for some support as well, so it's an official ask, is that what you're thinking as well?
I think that that has to be an official ask, yes. And,
And I think, like you said, we don't know all the numbers, Patty.
Yeah.
I think it would be not responsible to discuss numbers here until we come back to the next meeting.
okay,
And to bring that back, to go forward, to ask the county. I mean,
Judge?
and I'm not removed from asking the city as well, because, I mean, there are a lot of inner city schools as well. Although they don't have a body here, it does benefit our city to have a children's trust fund.
Go ahead.
I guess that's,
Could you get up to the mic? I'm not
I'm
sure
sorry.
everybody's being able
She's
to
tired.
hear you.
I
I'm sorry.
am, I'm sorry. It's been a long day.
Long day.
I guess I think, following up on that, did we just hire Mr. Ritchie, but we don't know what kind of salary he wants yet? I mean, is that what just happened?
I think that's what you did.
We made him a registered
I
agent.
think I heard that
Designated
he,
him as an agent, there was
Yeah, we
not a
made-
salary
Correct.
attached to the
Correct.
designated
He's a volunteer
agency.
registered agent.
I
right now,
think
as far
he's,
as I'm
yeah.
concerned.
Yeah.
If he was here, he could ask for an amount, but he's not here.
Yeah, Yeah, we did not offer him any money in our vote.
And I don't think, Judge, that we could, because.
Well, that's my point, but
Yeah.
it sounds like, I mean,
I think that we make him the registered agent and then we come forth.
I know, I know this
Yeah,
is very frustrating for you all. There's a lot of chicken and egg, obviously. But one day you're going to look back on this and you're going to say, man, that
Yeah,
was,
we don't even know what
did so
Buzz's
much.
salary demand is.
Yeah, I think if we ultimately designate him as the interim executive director, then there would be a greater task than just as a registered agent. A registered
Correct.
agent is just someone who's receiving
Correct.
and distributing formal documents on behalf of the trust. So that's not typically.
And I'm going to be
funded.
supportive of it, like Patty, I've known Buzz, but let me just tell you, in dealing with her counterparts on the school board and Miami County Commissioner, there may be some that they would, if they're going to put dollars, they would expect for a position to be advertised. I mean, I don't know if people want to fund that. I mean, so I think that there are some
that's right.
technicalities that we're going to have to talk
I
about.
just wanted to make
I
sure
mean,
we're
we
all on
could,
the same
I
page.
mean, so I don't want to, when you said we
There
all,
was no money attached because we have no money
I
to
am
give.
supporting him as a registered agent. I'm not voting to
So when
support
we talk
anybody
about
with a job.
hypothetical interim director, that's hypothetical.
Yeah.
So I think,
And Buzz is a dear friend of mine, so, I mean,
I
but
think
I'm
one of
not
the bullets
supporting
it
a
sounds
job.
like you're asking for is administrative functions and staffing. It would also be trust budget, first-year trust budget would be something you probably want to talk with them about. And then I would say official letterhead with all of your names so that you can then make an official ask of the other governing bodies. I know that sounds silly, but simple, but I think these
Well,
are
I
the
mean,
kind of
things
things that we're
simple. I mean, I don't
creating.
know if I agree with the letterhead. I mean, you know, I didn't vote on this letterhead. So, I mean, there's some, there's some details that we're gonna have to work out.
You don't like that?
I didn't create that. So, I mean, I didn't say I didn't like it. I said that, you know, if I'm gonna have the responsibility, I'm gonna have the authority. You know.
And I think Ms. Watson mentioned that she could get us copies of position descriptions for the executive directors. At a minimum, because obviously if that's the position we had first established, then they would be recruiting for their staff and other positions to support their team. But I was glad the reference was brought up about the capacity to earn federal dollars with the new FFPSA, simply because that brings into the discussion the capacity to understand revenue maximization and eligibility determination and those things that allow you to earn federal dollars. So not every CEO brings that with them. And so having that capacity in either in your CEO or CFO is a big deal. And we need to look through those position descriptions to see if those kinds of things are addressed.
So,
That makes me think of a question. Ms. Watson, do you often see Children's Trust organizations apply for grants?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
A lot of our CSC members have grants. Broward County, for example, has a huge integrated data system grant. There are other CSCs that receive Department of Justice grants for gang prevention programs. And so, yes, they do receive grants. They do apply for studies and research. That is the other part of the CSC is how do you bring research forward so that you can take innovation. One of the things that we do at the Florida Children's Council is take the really strong outcomes and innovations that are created in communities through dollars that are more unrestricted than those that have state and federal guidelines to it, and really bring to Tallahassee the opportunity to scale those initiatives to better serve all children around Florida. So the great thing about children's councils and trusts are that they are the innovation and incubation hubs for real strong policy and funding that can be replicated and utilized as a scalable resource for Florida as legislators, lawmakers are looking towards how they can better prepare more efficient services for Floridians.
Great. Thank you.
Ms. Watson, I think too, it would be informative, because I had upfront knowledge of this when I worked on the Children's Board in Hillsborough County. They have a lot of property, and they have 5 or 6 now family centers that are a significant part of their service array in Hillsborough County. Well, it's very clear in here that none of this money can be used to buy property. So they have to have other income coming in from somewhere in order to fund their real estate that they've invested in. So is there a piece of that you can talk to about those children's boards that have really gone off outside to generate other income, not necessarily just grant income, but other sources of income?
Absolutely. I mean, they have, some of, obviously, the larger CSCs have grant writing departments. Some of the smaller CSCs have a grant writing team. And so they absolutely are constantly combing grant opportunities, whether they be federal, state, private foundation opportunities to continue to bring dollars in. I do want to make one clarification. In statute, you are allowed to purchase property with your dollars. So I don't want to think that you can't. You can if you look at Chapter 125, but many CSCs do not do that until have been established for a long time. Usually it's because they have reverted dollars that accrue over significant time for underutilization, and they've done the feasibility study that makes the determination that actually buying and owning property is cheaper than potentially renting property. So I would say that is nothing that you are going to have to concern yourselves with for probably quite a few years. But there always is the opportunity to bring in foundation dollars, federal dollars, state dollars, should you wish to apply for grants and it meet and be in line with your comprehensive service delivery plan. The other thing that I just want to make clear, and I'm not a lawyer, and so I know that you have counsel in the gallery, is that if you are looking to split the line of credit, please just be reminded that there's a no supplantation clause for K through 12. And so depending on where those dollars come from, I just caution you on a potential split line of credit and doing your due diligence if you are going to ask the school system to be a part of that.
Thank you. I was getting ready to bring that point, ask you that question, so you read my mind. Because I would ask the transition team, they went to the county for the line of credit, and that's because the county is collecting the revenue.
I haven't been to anybody. Nobody's been.
The county is going to collect it.
But nobody's asked the transition team, transition team has not asked anyone for a line of.
Yes, they did. They did a county board commission.
It was an informational.
Yeah.
That's something that you might come back to them and request, and it's the tax collector.
Because I do want
not the county.
to get some guidance, because I was concerned about the use of K-12 monies. So we'll have to get some additional language. Well, she gave us some caution on that, and so we'd have to look into that. My assumption is because y'all are the revenue source, it comes through the county, that you're the one that will be dispersing what's received. Yeah.
I don't think I'm clear.
You want to explain I know it's almost time for SCO. Do you have a quick?
I don't need clarity on that. I guess I need clarity on whether there has been a request on behalf of this council to.
I think
for
we're
a
going to
line
wait
of
until
credit.
next month to talk about that when we have the numbers, maybe? Didn't you make a request that we have a little more
I'm sorry.
information?
I thought you just told me that request has already been made, and that's what I was seeking clarification on.
I believe it was the committee of the whole or the agenda review. We presented different paths forward and wanted to update the county commissioners.
So it's just it
Yeah.
was just, it wasn't an ask.
We-
Okay, that's what I was thinking.
You all
That's what
have
I
that
said,
authority.
So that's what.
Yeah.
Right, and so also private lending is an option. It's just that the precedent was line of credit from the tax collector in the other CSC counties. I don't know that any have sought the private equity.
Okay. So thank you for that clarification. Thank you for that clarification.
I think my only other point is I had withdrawn my motion about recognizing the transition team based on the commissioner's concerns, but at minimum, I think we need to address Ms. Grove's role as our minute taker and give her some sort of authority and role so that her minutes can be recognized, and we need to figure out where those minutes are going.
Well, I think one of the good things is we're being recorded the meeting is being recorded. So
So we're not
if
recognizing
there's a motion,
I mean, if Jennifer wants to keep doing it, I think it's fine, but I think Madam Administrator, and Jennifer's shaking her head, I mean, in other counties, the county could staff this administratively until we can launch this. I mean,
We can
we
have-
have the resources to do that.
we can, as a board, move that Ms. Grove's minutes be recorded and submitted to us for approval
Okay.
at next month's
quarter.
meeting.
That was my.
And at that point, then
And then we can-
administratively, we could bring our county staff in to provide those resources in our attorney's office.
Okay.
I mean, I think that we bring our attorney office in, that's even better because they already understand all of the rules. Not that Jennifer doesn't.
I'm glad you have that authority.
Yeah,
Just
I
that
was
they
thinking
can
the
do
same
it.
thing.
Madam Chair, do we need a motion then?
Well, I think it would be a record that we're going to authorize Ms. Jennifer Grove to submit the minutes she's taking tonight to our meeting next month for approval.
I'll make that motion that Jennifer Grove be able to submit minutes taken this evening for our next meeting.
I'll second.
Thank you. All in favor? Any opposed? Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you, Ms. Grove. All right. So we've taken care of the
Chair.
minutes. We've taken care of our next meeting. We know the items that we need. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
We
Madam
did
Chair.
want to allow for public comment.
Oh, okay. That's right. It is on the agenda. Public comment. And we'll have to set up a mechanism for public input. Tonight, if you want to speak, raise your hand and come to the podium. I don't see anybody running forward. Jennifer would like to speak.
The minute taker.
The minute taker, she wants to make sure that she has to make it legible or something.
Yes, your registered minute taker. I would just like to say, Jennifer Grove, 1407 East Blunt Street, Pensacola, Florida, 32503. I would just like to say how very excited I am for all of you to kick off this, what I believe will be a transformational opportunity for our children, our families, and ultimately our entire community. Please know the heart of all of us that have been working on this for over a year is all about getting this set up to the best of our ability as a community so that we can do what each of you has mentioned, which is fill in those critical gaps and cracks that we have, that when we knit together all the amazing nonprofits and school district and multiple levels of education and other children's services, we know there are kids and families that get left out. And so we are so excited that this day has come and that you're all approaching it with such experience and expertise. And I'm personally really excited about your focus on community input throughout the process. I didn't do anywhere near as many community events as Kim did, but I will tell you, I feel the weight of the community request of what we do with these dollars. And I'm really excited about your approach, and we look forward to supporting you in any way that we can. I'm happy to have been your official minute taker, and I will submit those to your chair. And really look forward to this as it progresses in this community that we all love. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Grove. And again, I think each of us need to, again, say thank you to those who are on the transition team, that those who work diligently, giving presentations, and in the community, that we got 61% of our population to approve this. And truly, as Commissioner May said, we know what the community wants us to do with it, and it is our directive that we put the money in the right place. One more.
Julian McQueen, 22 High Point Drive, Gulf Breeze. I just, as chairman of the transition team, I just want to also add to what Jennifer said and Kim and everyone else, how grateful we are and excited we are about seeing y'all take this mantle and running with it so quickly. I know it was a bit of a push, and we struggled with how much we should be saying and how much we shouldn't be saying, and we kind of erred on the side of asking forgiveness than asking permission. But over time, we're talking about $100 million going towards this community. I cannot think of anything that I've seen in the last 30 years of being here in Pensacola that will have a greater impact for generations to come. This is an opportunity for us to stop the cycle of poverty in ways that we could never imagine before. And the idea that the community is so strongly behind it, I think should give you all confidence that the decisions that y'all are making for where this money goes is going to be wildly rewarded with the next generation and the next generation and the next generation. I'm sure that we will look back at this time as a historic moment in Escambia County, and we'll all be proud that we were able to step up and show up and make some tough decisions and give back to the community that we love so much. So thank you for doing everything that you're doing to bring this forward.
Thank you so much. Anyone else?